Hello everyone, Shaadootlaa here. We are going to be beading this needle case that has this beautiful seaweed design of our ancestors pattern. This is wool and we have some bias tape and we have some ribbon, and it is a needle book because it has several different pages for you to put your beading needles or your pins, and there's some extra space if you want to put your scissors here and tie a ribbon to hold those into place. This was inspired by one of the studies that I had done some years ago, and I ran into this image of a tobacco bag. So I had this is just a part of it. It had some cotton on it and some string, and it had cotton in the back. From that design, I immediately saw a needle case. So it is cut in half, and it has this scoop to it. Here's the pattern that you'll get in your kit, which has the front and the back. And then on tracing paper, I on the corner, you'll be able to trace your seaweed design. And you'll have choices of wool here. Here's one that has been traced. The template has been traced, and we have the seaweed design. We have the wool and the backing. So from there, we're going to pin all of those three together, and I have a needle and thread, and this is just to hold down your beading. After we sew it all together, I am going to cut this pattern away from the tracing paper and the wool. One of the reasons why I like using tracing paper for the whole design is it will protect your wool and your beading in case we have a cup of coffee, or we have to give the puppies a treat. If we get pulled away from our beading and we return to it, we'll have this tracing paper to protect it as we're beading. There's so many different ways that you can bead. Some will bead around a template. Just tying a knot to end it. You'll hear my little bird in the background. His name is Fern. In case you are hearing him. Now we're ready to cut out our pattern. Just going to trim that with a nice pair of scissors. And go around and follow that. We're going to need a cotton liner, so that will be one thing to look around and see if there's any remnants of sewing or even clothing. Now we're ready to bead. Here we have two beading needles. These are size 12 that go with the size 11 beads. I chose a light periwinkle blue and a shiny white, and then this beautiful yellow. I chose those because I thought of Alaskan forget-me-nots. And then here we have the size 0, which is for bead size 13. It's a little bit small for these bead size, but since we're doubling our needle, it'll be fine. Here we have threaded one of our needles, and we doubled the thread, and we tied a little knot. And this is the one that is going to be holding all the beads. I like to look at designs, and starting at the curve is easier to match up than a straight line. So we're going to start over here, and we're going to work the bottom part of the seaweed design. So you notice that all the curves is the change of color. So we're going to start right here. I'm going to add my double thread right at that turn. So this one is going to be holding the beads. The second needle, which is stationed right here, waiting, doesn't have to be as long, and this is going to be a single strand. So I'll have a tail, and at the end, we are going to tie it in a knot. I don't know if you could see, it is white, a little translucent. I like to grab and make a little balloon, like. I'll put my finger through the balloon, and I'll wrap, turn, and then I'll grab the tail, and I'm going to guide it through the top of our balloon. And there is our knot. And pull, pull, pull. There's our little knot. You can grab the top of it and pull it so it's a little bit tighter. And there you go. With this 3 colors, I think I'm going to start with the blue, and then we'll have some of the white, and then yellow. As we get here, I'll see if I'm going to switch the white and yellow. So on the needle that is the working needle of holding all the beads, the double stranded, I put some beads on. We have, I start with 4. I guide them on the line of the pattern. And then this needle is the working needle. And I'm going to go between the 4, right there, and pull up. So I went from one side. So we came up to this side, and I'm going to jump over to the other side of those 2 beads and anchor them down. With my thumb, I'm going to grab the next 2 and just guide them to where the line is. Come up from one side as close as I can get without piercing the thread. And as you can see, there's jumping over, and then I'm putting my needle as close to the bead and thread without piercing that thread. And then line up 4 more beads. You can kind of guide them and look at where you want them to go next. From one side, so I know I need to jump over, anchor those down. one side. I poked my needle to rest and hold it while I grab the other beads. Working with 4 at a time. We have 3, so I'm going to add 1 more. Looking where the line is. I know I want it to be there, so I can kind of just guide it. And I grabbed my needle that was resting. Come out from one side and then jump to the other side and secure that. Sometimes the thread will want to go to the next bead. Just carefully push it over. And being able to find where you're at, poking through. In the back, my finger is right there. So I have the guide as my finger and then the guide with my thumb. You could just do gentle pokes to guide your needle. And then we're at a turn, and that turns, instead of putting 2 beads down at a time, this is where I'll put 1. So I could just make sure that turn. Sometimes beads can be feel more square and brick-like on turns. Even though they're round, you're like, what? I gotta make this turn. So 1 bead at a time. Have a little bit more control of that curve. This needle that's holding your beads, if you grab your needle, you can anchor it to your sweater, like so, and it helps with the gravity of feeding some of those beads. There's that turn. Do 1 bead. 1. Holding 2 beads in place, but I'm still going to do 1 at a time, just guiding where the next one's going to go. Oh, I just unthreaded. Whoops, that happens so much. I anchor the thread as close as I can to my 2, my middle finger and my pinky. That's not my pinky, my thumb. Sorry about that. Then I could just find where that thread is. Yeah. That's such a pretty blue. Grabbing 4 just to see where how that's going to behave. And I grabbed the thread and pulled it to make it a little bit tighter for those beads to line up. My thumb is anchoring the thread holding the beads, and we have the working needle in the back. So I'm going to anchor the first 2 of that 4, one side, and jump to the other as close to the beads and close to the middle of those 2 beads. And the thread slowly goes to anchor. And we started at the curve. We're doing the bottom part of the seaweed. And I'm going to follow all the way over. And then up here, I'm going to do one bead at a time, especially right here. And then stop right there and we'll add the next color. As I'm beading along, my needle got snagged in here. There we go. As I'm beading along, I noticed my thread is so small that it keeps falling out. So this was the fine thread for size 13 or 15 beads. So I'm going to go down, nice and tight. I'm going to go down the next set. I came up from this side. I'm going to jump over and bead down. I'm going to change my thread. Just anchored it, going to the back, and I'm looking at the loops that I had sewn down the beads with, and it's white on white, so sometimes it's a little harder to see. I'm going through that thread, and I'm creating that loop. There's a loop. I'm going to go through it 1, 2, 3, and 4, and pull. It's going to slide down and create a knot. And then just for security purposes, I'm going to do one more. Oop, see, it's so slippery. So slippery. So this is for size 13. I'll write on it in case I forget because I have so many threads here and there. And look, I've already made bead soup. So this is a size D, and it's on the darker side of the thread. And our color that we're using is navy. So I think the black will be okay on it. I'm going to pull that. This is definitely much thicker. Let's see if we have better luck with this one. And then you can see there's a thread, the eye of the needle. I'm going to push down. And then pinch the tip, feed it through. Grab the loop and the tail. Nice little knot. Continue beading. And if you have a chance to condition your thread, in our kit we have some beeswax. This helps keep the thread together and going through the multi-layers, it'll prevent fraying. This is already wax, but sometimes doing a little bit more conditioning Makes it a little bit stronger. If you're beading, you could listen to an audio or some of your favorite music. Light a candle. Make a nice cup of tea. It's always fun to bead with others and get all the jokes going, stories, trading beads and bead patterns. Having two different colors also helps with which one is the working strand, which one's holding the beads. I like to think about all the ancestors that beaded in the era of ANS and A and B, and how all the aunties and moms and grandmas would trade all those beautiful beaded colors and patterns of seaweed and floral and the ANS spirit of beading, Alaska Native Sisterhood. Beading kind of slows down the world. Relaxing. I'm going to pull it closer. And I'll continue on. With our seaweed design, we started over here in this corner and we went bead by bead on the turn and then up above, and then we kept following the line. And then over here, we did one bead at a time and did that turn. You see the difference between this turn and this turn? This is on the bead and this is in the middle of a bead turn. One of the characteristics of beading, we are at the end of the blue, and I decided I'm going to go with white next. So I put some beads on the thread holding the beads. That's double threaded and always stays on the top, and it just holds the beads as the bead rides on the design field and gets anchored down. Um, if you work one bead at a time and you just give it a nice tug at the corner, go from one side and then from the other. Oh, it moved a little. It's okay. I just put my thumb on top of it to hold it in place. I poked my resting needle in the back to hold it while I work some of these beads. And I put 2 down. I like that turn. That's a pretty nice turn. Go 2 at a time now. Now that we're on the straight line of our beading design. I'm holding down 4, rotating it back and forth to watch that line. I went ahead and I'm anchoring down the 4 beads. Gives my thumb a little rest as I jump back and go between 2 and 3. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and between 2 and 3. Backtracked a little. Tracking down bead 4. I'm jumping back and taking down the middle 2. Tucking those down. You could do 2 at a time. This white bead has a very pretty finish to it. Shiny. These blues are considered matte. Those are matte. It's a matte blue, periwinkle blue, or in our case, forget-me-not blue. These yellows are matted as well. And I'll continue. I'm going to go all the way over here, and at these turns, I'll do 1 bead at a time, 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 and 1 bead at a time. We're at these fun turns on our seaweed design. Trying to get all the beads lined up. And repositioning my hand, you can fold your design of your pattern to get closer to where you need to bead. There's that turn. I'm writing the line. Putting 2 beads down. Jumping from one side to the other. And then I need to rotate my bead work so I can get to that angle. And we're at that 1 bead corner. it too tight, it kind of goes off the line. So just making sure it stays on that line. You could use your needle to make sure that goes nice and snug. Resting the needle. This is a turn in between the beads. And pivoting back and forth just to find out where the line is. Trying to make a little knot there. Let's see, the tail looks like it's going through that loop, and that's what was stopping it. Let's see if we fixed it. Yay. We'll add more beads and continue beading. Got a little bit more beads on the thread. This is a fun turn. Sometimes I'll look at different seaweed uh, plants that grow in our waters, and the seaweed, the seaweed, edible seaweed, the red seaweed and the black seaweed. I'll look at the bull kelp, and I always see these beading designs when I see them. I kind of just pulled a little, suggesting that this one turn with the next bead, and it did pull that thread a little, but once I push on that bead, it will find like a medium, a happy medium. I'll reattack that thread. And see how that just kind of gave a little. This beading thread is not only strong, but it's also flexible. It has a nice little um, flex to the nylon. My mom, when she would bead, she used even the thread that came with the hanks of beads, the thread that was holding the beads, she would repurpose that thread. Right, that turn. Use your finger to push them in place and pull on that thread and push with your thumb. And then I'm going to it's kind of feels straight to me, so I'm just going to give it a little poke, and it just pops. And it just pops. Debating if I think I'll do one bead right here, one bead at a time at that turn. There we go. I just poke it there to rest. It's ready to start sewing down beads. As soon as I'm done, picking up more. So I went like this, it would be really skinny, so pull it, and I'm going to just give it a little tug, give it a little bit more space. Kind of use my pinky to stretch that thread, curving in, anchoring down at the fourth bead. And I'll backtrack to bead 2 and 3. I'm glad I switched out the thread. That one kept falling out of the needle. So we have size 13. This is for smaller micro beading. And then 15 for even smaller micro beading. And then here's 10, which is a little bit larger than what we're using. These ones are 12s. And this is the thread that I started with for size 13 beads. And then we have D, which is a much bigger thread. Here's a comparison of the two side by side. Mixing bead sizes is a lot of fun too. You wanted to outline this with the size 11, 12 beads, and if you wanted to go down to size 13, which is a smaller bead, and we'll continue to the turn. We are at the turning point. We stopped right there with our white, and we're at the curve and changing colors, and I put some yellow and rotate my beading, see what feels comfortable, and you can fold to get as close to your beading. And I put one bead at that corner, push on it, push on those beads, kind of lining them up straight. It's a nice curve. And line curves up, push on those beads. Kind of holding away. make sure that it stays a single thread and doesn't get cut to be a double. There we go. Just setting 4 beads on so I could see what that curve is going to look like. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to go 1 bead at a time so I know how many beads it takes to take that curve. It'll be okay to put those together, those last 2. 2 and 3. Looks like we have 3 beads to go. I'm going to change color to blue. Periwinkle blue. Forget me not blue. Here we switched out to Forget Me Not Blue, and we're at a turn. I'm going to do 1 bead at a time. You can rock this thread back and forth. And you can anchor it tighter in the back, that last stitch we did, and figure out, like I did it here, it kind of brings the yellow to a curve, and I like that curve right there. So I anchor down I just pushed it forward. Let's see what happens. There we go. Before I anchor this blue bead down, I'm just going to tug. There we go. Tug at the bead. And put the last row of beads on. And I push in. Reinforce that little curve. I went over 3 and 4. That's okay. Go back and 1 and 2, just to reinforce that. at a little angle turn. I'm going to just push that bead at an angle and anchor this one. I'm going to shift a little and straighten that out, curve. And I'm going to replace this thread and backtrack. And oh, I was hoping to use the needle to go through the hole, but I could do this by hand or by fingers. I'm going to repeat going into that loop to create that knot. And I just secure it one more time. I'm going to jump to the next one. It's pretty short. And go through that loop 2 to 3 times or 4, depending on how much you have to work with. So I'll replace my thread and I'll keep going and change colors at that turn. Now we're at the corner and I'm looking at my beading, and sometimes you can just go off your line that you drew on the tracing paper, because if I put my finger here, I know that they're matched. They're like lining up. So I'm going to go a little off grid of my drawing, my initial drawing. There's one bead for the turn. I'll add this one, include that in the turn. Rotating my beading. Just folded my paper a little. Just one bead at a time. There's one. I'll do the next one. It's a really pretty yellow. Does it look like forget-me-nots to you? Such a soft blue, periwinkle blue, forget-me-not blue. This yellow is very vibrant. There's a line, swivel it, poke those over there. Sometimes even the direction that you are anchoring down the beads help with where they line up. I want it to go a little bit more this way. So I'll just jump on that side, jump over that thread, and anchor those beads down. See that little tug? I tug it, I'll move the beads a little. Drawing with our beads. Now add more, and then we'll meet at that corner. And here we're at our last curve of our white. We started here and we went all the way around, one bead at a time on the turns, adding a new color, one bead at a time at the turns. So much fun. What colors do you plan on using? Are you going to go with 3 colors? Are you going to do 4 colors? You can see the size difference between the yellow and the white. The white is a little bit bigger. I love mixing bead sizes and bead colors. So much fun. See how just a little uneven. You put them right there and you pull on the thread and straighten them out. The tension. We're at that curve. I'm going to do one little bead at a time. It's so worth doing. So worth doing one bead at a time for those curves, especially when it's so micro, so little. So if you think of beading as drawing with beads, the corners or the turns or the curves, we're kind of sketching, doing like little sketches. We're at a really nice turn. Put these two down right there. And I'm going to rotate my beading. Try to get that curve. I'm going to tighten up those beads. Grab one bead and give it a turn. Instead of turning on the dime, we're turning on the bead. And I'm going to rotate my beading, get a fold, just folding it like so, so I get it closer as I rotate and put those two beads down, push, pull. I'm pushing with my thumb and pulling at the same time. I'm going to just do one bead at a time on this turn. Rotate. I'm just grabbing 4 beads and just looking at what it's going to look like. I'll just do these 2 at a time right here. So done with that turn. Add more beads. Added some more beads and I'm ready to do 1 bead at a time for this turn. And push on them. See where they end up in place. little bit of suggestions, and you could just kind of next bead, and then as you're pushing on that one, you could pull in your thread, get them closer together on that turn. Just grabbing the 4 to get an idea of the placement. Backtrack. I'm going to do that one in the middle. So each one of those are anchored at that curve. And add the 2 more beads. Rotate my beading. I just had a little itch on my nose, and it's a perfect reason why I love using this for protecting the wool as I'm working on it. Whoop. I just pushed a whole bunch of beads off the mat. If you push down on them, they'll stick to your fingers. I'm going to put those over there. I'm going to add more beads, and we'll go to that, the beginning. We are at the tail end of our seaweed design. We're beading on our needle case. Pulling on that. See that give? It's a nice give. Beading thread. We're at the last couple of beads. I'm going to go one at a time and do a little test run to see where we're at. So there's one. So it feels like it's just a line in line. It doesn't have this curve. So I'm going to add one more bead. See, that looks like it's curving. Now if I add one more, is it going to bunch up and be too much? But it doesn't match what we have going on the other side. So I'm going to take out that extra bead that we just put on. Instead of 3, we're going to work with 2. And I like that. I'm going to grab the working needle that is threading down our beads. And I'm doing one bead at a time because it's that curve. And this one, before I bead it down, I'm going to run through the beginning of our blue. Just doing 3. And rotate. And there, that's a good match. Take that one bead and anchor. Right there, between the blue and white. I'm going to pull on this one more time. Just give it a nice secure tug. And right where I'm coming out of the blue, I'm going to go down and going to end. Pretty short. I just want to get maybe 2 knots. There we go. Put that one aside. I'm going to work on with the black one. My beads are flying everywhere. I'm making more bead soup. I'm going to cut these 2. Give them a nice secure knot. I do tend to overknot things. Overknot and overthink things. It's a good thing. Just cleaning up some of the tails. And there's our seaweed design. Our forget-me-not seaweed design. Isn't that pretty? I decided to just do the touch of yellow. Oh, that's pretty. Next, we'll go on to removing the tracing paper.